The sharp crack of the judge's gavel hit the heavy wooden desk, and the sound traveled straight through me, rattling my bones like an echo of all the silent years I'd carried inside. My name is Margaret Collins, I'm 67 years old, and on that day, I found myself in a cold courtroom with my wrinkled hands wrapped tightly around a yellow envelope I'd guarded for 13 long years. My heart was beating so hard I worried the whole room could hear it. Across from me sat my daughter, Rachel. She was polished, confident-looking in her neat suit, her hair tied back, and next to her was attorney David Barnes, flipping through a stack of papers with the air of a man certain the truth was already sitting at his table. Rachel's eyes cut into me like knives, filled with a rage I couldn't quite understand, or maybe I knew exactly where it came from but just couldn't admit it out loud. Your Honor, Rachel's voice rang out, shaky but firm. My mother has kept my children from me for 13 years without my consent. That is parental kidnapping. I never allowed her to take them. Kidnapping. The word struck me like a physical blow. It landed hard in my chest, right in the place where I had stored every motherly ache and heartbreak. I turned around. Behind me sat my 3 grandchildren, Daniel, 20 years old now, Sarah, 18, and Lily, just 16. They were lined up on the third bench, their faces pale, their eyes lost, as though they were caught in a movie they couldn't make sense of. Judge Robert Whitman, an older man with silver hair and tired eyes, studied me over his glasses. Mrs. Collins, what do you have to say about these accusations? My hand squeezed the envelope tighter. Inside were the truths I had hidden, carried, and protected for over a decade. Truths that were both my treasure and my deepest wound. Your Honor, I began, my voice trembling but steady enough to hold. I did not kidnap anyone. I raised the children my daughter left on my doorstep. That's a lie. Rachel shot up from her chair, her anger boiling over. I never abandoned them. I was struggling with mental illness. I needed temporary help. Her lawyer touched her arm, signaling for her to sit. Your Honor, my client suffered from severe postpartum depression. She required urgent treatment. Mrs. Collins took advantage of her vulnerability to keep the children and drive a wedge between them and their biological mother. The room filled with hushed whispers. I saw people nodding as though the story had already been decided in their minds. But I knew the truth. I had lived it every single day for 13 years. The early mornings, the long nights with fevers, the homework spread out across the kitchen table. The tears and the hugs when the children asked why their mother wasn't there. Mrs. Collins, the judge said more softly, I understand that caring for your grandchildren must have been difficult, but if their biological mother is now requesting custody. With all due respect, Your Honor, I interrupted, my voice stronger this time. This court needs to hear the full truth before making any decision. I lifted the yellow envelope high. The gesture was small, but I caught a flash of fear in Rachel's eyes. Inside this envelope, I continued, are documents that will change this conversation completely. Judge Whitman leaned forward. What kind of documents? Proof, I said clearly. Proof of what truly happened 13 years ago. Proof of why my daughter is here today. And it isn't out of love. Rachel's face went pale. Mom, please. Don't do this. Don't do what? I asked her. Tell the truth. Attorney Barnes cleared his throat. Your Honor, Mrs. Collins is trying to distract from the actual issue. Old documents don't change the fact that my client is the children's legal mother. I met my daughter's eyes head-on. On the contrary, Mr. Barnes, these documents explain exactly why she has returned after 13 years. They explain why she never sent a dime to help, never made a single phone call, not even on Christmas. And why all of a sudden she's here with a lawyer. The silence in that room felt like the pause before a storm. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, the nervous shuffle of Barnes's papers, and the uneven breathing of my grandchildren just behind me. The judge looked hard at me. Mrs. Collins, are you saying your daughter has ulterior motives in this case? I'm not suggesting anything, Your Honor, I replied, my voice firm. I'm stating it plainly. Yes. I looked back at Rachel and saw the same look she wore as a child when I caught her lying. Fear mixed with defiance. Mom, she whispered. Please think about what you're doing. I've had 13 years to think, I told her. 13 years of nights when Daniel burned with fever. 13 years of sitting alone at school meetings. 13 years waiting for a call from you that never came. The judge tapped his gavel lightly. Mrs. Collins, are you prepared to present these documents as evidence? I looked down at the envelope. Inside were the letters Rachel had written me, the photographs I had taken, the receipts I had saved, and one more thing. Something not even my grandchildren knew I had. Something that would change everything. Yes, Your Honor, I said with steady resolve. I'm ready. The judge nodded and glanced at his agenda. Very well. Before reviewing the evidence, I would like you to tell the court the full account of what happened 13 years ago. I closed my eyes and the memory came back like it was yesterday. It was a rainy Tuesday in October. I had just come back from the doctor's office where I learned my arthritis was getting worse. I was standing in my little kitchen, making chamomile tea to calm my nerves, when I heard a knock at the door. A heavy, hurried knock. And when I opened it, everything changed. It was just a sheet of paper, folded and refolded so many times that the creases had become part of it, the edges yellowed with age. But it carried the most important words of this whole story. And before I revealed it, I knew there was something else I had to do first. Your Honor, I said, steadying my voice, before I show the final document, I would like the court to hear directly from my grandchildren. I believe it's only fair that they have the chance to speak for themselves. Rachel sat up straighter, her eyes flickering with sudden hope. Her attorney, David Barnes, leaned in and nodded quickly. Your Honor, my client agrees. The minors have the right to express their preferences. Judge Whitman thought for a moment, then gave a slow nod. Very well. Daniel Collins, please come forward. My oldest grandson rose to his feet. At 20 years old, Daniel was tall and lean, with the same sharp, intelligent eyes his grandfather once had, and a quiet sensitivity that ran deep in our family. He walked to the stand with careful steps, as though every move took effort and thought. Daniel, the judge said gently, I know this must be very hard for you. I want you to feel free to speak honestly. Do you remember your biological mother? Daniel swallowed, glanced at Rachel for only a moment, and then answered. Yes, Your Honor. I remember bits and pieces. I remember confusion. I remember days when the cupboards were bare, when there wasn't food in the house. I remember my grandma Margaret showing up with grocery bags, feeding us, cleaning us up. I remember the night we came to live with her, how she bathed us, gave us warm clothes, and made chicken soup for dinner. The judge leaned in. And how do you feel about your mother's absence all these years? Daniel closed his eyes for a second before speaking. Your Honor, I carried anger for a long time. I didn't understand why my mom never came back. At school, other kids had parents cheering at their games, parents helping with homework, parents driving them to practice. I didn't. What I had was my grandma. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, and still she never once missed a parent-teacher conference. I could see Rachel crying silently, but Daniel pressed on, his voice carrying a quiet strength that broke me inside. When I turned 15, the anger faded. That's when I realized Grandma had given up her own health, her peace of mind, and her savings for us. She didn't have to raise us, but she did because she loves us. And now that your biological mother is here asking for custody, how do you feel? The judge asked. Daniel turned his gaze to Rachel. Mom, he said softly, if I can call you that, I'm glad to know you're better. I'm glad you overcame your struggles. But I can't ignore 13 years of silence. I can't forget the pain of knowing you started another family, while we were left wondering what we'd done wrong. The courtroom went still. Rachel's sobs grew louder. Where would you like to live, Daniel? Judge Whitman asked. Your Honor, Daniel answered firmly. I'm an adult now, so I can make my own choices. But if my words help protect my younger sisters, I'll say this clearly. I want to stay with my grandma Margaret Collins. She's the one who raised us. She's the one who never abandoned us. Daniel walked back to his seat, and the judge called the next witness. Sarah Collins, please come forward. My 18-year-old granddaughter moved to the stand with her usual quiet grace, though I could see the strain in her shoulders. Sarah, you are of legal age as well, the judge said. What is your perspective on this case? Sarah drew in a deep breath before speaking. Your Honor, my memories are a little clearer than Daniel's. I remember my mom crying all the time. I remember her not getting out of bed. and us fending for ourselves. Rachel suddenly blurted out, "I was sick. I had postpartum depression." "Mrs. Collins," the judge said firmly, "let your daughter finish." Sarah's eyes welled with tears, but her voice stayed strong. "I do understand you were sick, Mom. But I also remember the day we came to Grandma's house. It was the first time anyone had asked if we'd eaten. It was the first time someone tucked us into bed and told us everything would be okay. Grandma read us stories, made us feel safe. She even took us to therapy when the nightmares wouldn't stop. When I was 14 and diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, she studied everything: nutrition, blood sugar testing, insulin, just so she could take care of me." The judge scribbled notes. "And as to where you'd like to stay?" Sarah glanced at Rachel, then back at the judge. "Your Honor, my biological mom is a stranger to me. She may share my blood, but my grandma shared my life, my childhood, my fears, my dreams. The decision isn't hard for me. I choose her." Tears blurred my vision as I watched Sarah return to her seat. Finally, the judge called, "Lily Collins." My youngest granddaughter, only 16, stepped forward. She looked so much like me at her age, yet carried the same streak of rebellion Rachel once had. "Lily," the judge said softly, "you're still a minor, but your opinion matters. What do you remember about your early years?" Lily looked straight at Rachel, her face unreadable. "Your Honor, I was very little, but I remember things. I remember being hungry. I remember crying and no one coming. I remember the smell of the place we lived, like sadness and neglect." Rachel slumped in her chair, her daughter's words hitting her like physical blows. "But," Lily continued, her voice firmer, "I also remember my first night at Grandma's. She gave me a warm bath, dressed me in pajamas that smelled like fabric softener, handed me a mug of warm milk with honey, and sang me to sleep. I'll never forget that." "Would you like the chance to get to know your biological mother better?" the judge asked carefully. Lily thought hard before answering. "Your Honor, I won't lie. I'm curious about her. But I'm also afraid. Afraid she'll disappear again like she did 13 years ago. Afraid her promises won't last." "And where do you feel safest?" "With my grandma Margaret," Lily answered without hesitation. "She's never left me, never lied to me. When I asked her why my mom was gone, she didn't sugarcoat it. She told me sometimes adults make hard choices, but she loved me enough to stay." She returned to her seat, and Judge Whitman looked at me once more. "Mrs. Collins, your grandchildren have spoken clearly. Is there anything else the court should know before I make my decision?" I looked down at the yellow envelope, then at my 3 brave grandchildren. They had spoken their truths. Now it was my turn to speak mine. "Yes, Your Honor," I said, my voice steady. "There is something else. Something that changes everything." I pulled out the final sheet from the envelope, creased and worn from years of being handled. "This," I said, holding it up, "is a document I found 2 years ago among the belongings Rachel left behind. A document she herself wrote and signed." Rachel turned as pale as a ghost. David Barnes leaned close, whispering frantically, but my daughter just shook her head over and over. "What kind of document, Mrs. Collins?" the judge asked. "A voluntary renunciation of parental rights, Your Honor. Written in Rachel's own hand, signed and dated 3 days after she left the children with me." Judge Whitman shot to his feet, his expression changing from calm professionalism to shock. "A voluntary renunciation of parental rights? Mrs. Collins, are you certain of this?" "Completely certain, Your Honor." I held it out for the clerk. "I found it among Rachel's abandoned belongings. The landlady gave it to me along with photographs and other documents she left behind." Rachel nearly collapsed in her chair. Her lawyer's hands trembled as he read the paper, the color draining from his face. This can't be real," he muttered. "Read it aloud," the judge ordered. The lawyer's voice cracked as he began. "I, Rachel Collins, age 26, hereby voluntarily give up all my rights as the mother of Daniel Collins, 7 years old, Sarah Collins, 5 years old, and Lily Collins, 3 years old. I acknowledge that I do not have the emotional, financial, or psychological ability to raise them properly." The air in the room was so heavy with silence, you could hear the quick, uneven breathing of every single person present. My grandchildren stared at one another, torn between disbelief and pain. "Continue," the judge said gravely. I fully authorize my mother, Margaret Collins, to make all legal, medical, and educational decisions concerning my children. I waive any right to visit them, contact them, or claim them in the future. This decision is final and cannot be reversed. Signed, Rachel Collins. Dated October 15, 2011. As David Barnes read those words aloud, Rachel collapsed into hysterical sobs. I was out of my mind. I didn't know what I was writing. I was sick. She cried, her voice echoing through the courtroom. Judge Whitman struck his gavel firmly. Order. Mrs. Collins, do you have witnesses to confirm this document was written voluntarily by your daughter? Yes, Your Honor, I replied. The landlady of the building where Rachel lived, Mrs. Paula Sterling, can testify that my daughter asked her for paper and a pen to write an important letter 3 days after leaving the children. She can also confirm that Rachel was coherent and aware during that time. David Barnes bent low, whispering something urgent to Rachel, but she continued sobbing, unable to compose herself. Furthermore, I said, my voice steady but not unkind, there is something else the court needs to know. Something I only discovered 2 weeks ago that explains why my daughter has suddenly returned now, after all these years. All eyes fixed on me. The air in the room felt thick, tense, expectant. Your Honor, I continued, pulling a folder from my purse, I hired a private investigator, not just to trace my daughter's recent movements, but to understand her current circumstances fully. What we found was telling. I opened the folder. Rachel and her partner, Javier Dawson, are facing a serious financial crisis. 6 months ago, Javier lost his job. 4 months ago, they received an eviction notice. And 3 months ago, right after learning of my brother's inheritance, they began pursuing custody of my grandchildren. Rachel lifted her tear-streaked face. Mom, please. Let me finish, Rachel, I said gently but firmly. The investigator also discovered that you and Javier have been living off loans and credit cards. You owe more than $30,000 in accumulated debt. Judge Whitman flipped through the documents I handed him. And you believe the inheritance belonging to your grandchildren is the motivation behind this custody claim? I don't just believe it, Your Honor. I know it, I said. I looked directly at Rachel. Because a week ago my daughter called me, for the first time in 13 years. The courtroom stirred with surprise. Even my grandchildren stared at me in shock. I had never told them about that phone call. And what did she say? The judge asked. She told me she had matured, that she'd overcome her troubles, and that she wanted her children back. I asked her why now after all this time. She said she'd been saving money and could finally give them a better life. But when I asked about the inheritance, she grew quiet. And then she said, Mom, that money belongs to my children. I just want to make sure they receive it when the time comes. And how did you respond? Judge Whitman pressed. I told her the inheritance was already secured for the children. It's in a trust fund under my guardianship, and each of them will have full access once they turn 21. That's when her tone changed. Rachel covered her face with both hands, as if bracing for what I would reveal. She told me, I said, my voice tightening, that as their biological mother, she had more right to manage the inheritance than I did. She said she'd already consulted with a lawyer and could fight for custody. And then she threatened me. The judge leaned forward. Threatened you? How? She said that if I didn't hand over custody and control of the inheritance, she would accuse me of kidnapping. She claimed she had witnesses who'd testify that I deliberately turned the children against her. She told me any judge would side with a biological mother over a grandmother. At that, Daniel suddenly shot up from his seat. Grandma, why didn't you tell us she threatened you? Because I didn't want you to carry any more worry than you already did, I said softly. And because I trusted the truth would surface when it was needed. Order. Judge Whitman struck his gavel again. Young man, sit down. He turned back to me. Mrs. Collins, do you have a record of this phone conversation? No, Your Honor, I admitted. Then I added, but I have something even better. I allowed myself the smallest of smiles. After that call, my daughter sent me text messages repeating those threats. I've kept them on my phone and had them printed for the court. I handed the papers to the clerk, who passed them to the judge. His brow furrowed deeper with every line he read. Would you read a few aloud? He asked. I took the printouts and read clearly. Message from July 18th. Mom, think it over carefully. I'm the biological mother, and any judge will side with me. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Message from July 20th. I spoke with my lawyer. He says what you did could be considered parental kidnapping. You could go to jail. And the last message, July 22nd. Mom, if you give me custody voluntarily, we can work out an arrangement for the inheritance. 50-50. You keep half for raising them, I keep half because I'm their mother. But if you force me to trial, I'll take it all. I lowered the papers and looked directly at the judge. Mrs. Collins, he said gravely, do you confirm that you sent these messages? Rachel's sobs filled the courtroom, but no words came. Her lawyer sat beside her, defeated. Your Honor, I said softly, I want the court to understand, I'm not here out of vengeance. I know my daughter struggled when she was young. I know early motherhood and mental illness can lead to desperate mistakes. I grieve for that. But what I cannot accept is that after 13 years of silence, after she legally relinquished her rights, after building a new life without these children, she comes back only because of money. The judge's voice was firm. What do you ask of the court? That my legal guardianship of my grandchildren be made permanent. That Rachel's custody petition be denied in full. And that a restraining order be issued preventing her from approaching the children, unless they themselves, once they are adults, choose to reconnect. Rachel leapt to her feet, shouting through her tears. You can't take my children away from me forever. I turned to her, my face a mixture of sorrow and resolve. Rachel, you gave them up 13 years ago. I'm not taking anything from you. I am protecting what you abandoned. The gavel struck again. 30-minute recess, Judge Whitman announced. The courtroom began to empty, but I remained seated, clutching my purse against my chest like armor. My grandchildren gathered around me, wrapping me in a silent embrace that spoke louder than words. Grandma, Lily whispered. Why didn't you ever tell us she signed us away? I stroked her hair. Because I wanted you to form your own opinions about your mother when you were old enough. I didn't want you to grow up carrying hate. Daniel squeezed my hand. But you told us maybe she'd come back one day. I didn't lie, sweetheart. There was always a chance she'd return for the right reasons. I held on to that hope for years. I looked across the room at Rachel, huddled with her lawyer, whispering desperately. But when she called me last week, I said quietly, I knew she hadn't come back for you. She had come back for the money. Sarah sat beside me, her eyes wide. What's going to happen now, Grandma? I don't know, I answered honestly. But we've told the truth. And that's all we can do. During the recess, I watched as Rachel slowly rose and started walking toward us. Her lawyer tried to pull her back, but she ignored him. Rachel walked toward me with hesitant steps. Like every foot she put down was a mountain she had to climb. Mom, she whispered, her voice trembling. Can we talk privately? Her tone reminded me of when she was a little girl caught doing something wrong. I know I made terrible mistakes, she said, her voice breaking. But I've changed. I've really changed. Have you truly changed, Rachel? I asked, not unkindly but with the blunt honesty only years of silence can buy. Or do you just need money? She lowered her eyes, shoulders sagging. Both are true, she admitted. Yes, I need the money. But I've also missed my children all these years. You've missed them. My voice rose despite myself. Rachel, you had 13 years to miss them. 13 years to call, to write, to send a single Christmas card. 13 years to ask how they were, if they needed anything, if they even remembered you. I was scared, she whispered. Scared they'd hate me for leaving them. Then why now? Why, after 13 years of fear, do you suddenly find the courage to fight for them in court? Rachel leaned against the window as if the glass itself was holding her up. Because Javier told me that if I didn't try to get my children, and their inheritance back, he would leave me. He said he couldn't stay with a woman who had given away $50,000. The honesty of that confession cut deep. For a moment I didn't see the hard, distant woman she had become. I saw a frightened girl, cornered by choices bigger than she could handle. Then you haven't changed at all, I said quietly, sorrow heavy in my chest. 13 years ago, You let a man's demands decide your children's future. And now, here you are again for the very same reason. It's not that simple, she snapped, but immediately lowered her voice, glancing nervously down the hall. Mom, you don't understand. Javier has supported me all these years. Without him, I have nothing. No job, no home, no savings. And what about your other child? I asked. The son you could raise because it was convenient for your relationship? She staggered as if I had struck her. Paul is different. He was born into my marriage with Javier. He was part of our plans. Daniel, Sarah, and Lily were your children too, Rachel. Didn't they deserve the same unconditional love? I couldn't give it to them, she cried, breaking down again. I was just a kid when I had them. Every time Daniel cried, I cried too. When Sarah had nightmares, I had panic attacks. I couldn't handle it. For the first time, compassion flickered in my heart. Then why didn't you come to me? I asked softly. Why didn't you say, Mom, I can't do this alone? Because I was afraid you'd judge me. I was afraid you'd tell me I was a bad mother. My voice softened. Rachel, I would have helped you. We could have raised them together. But instead you ran away. You abandoned them. I know, she sobbed. And I've carried that guilt for years. But Mom, now I can offer them something better. With the inheritance, I can give them a life I couldn't give before. With the inheritance? My voice hardened. Rachel, listen to me, it's not about money. It's about 13 years of absence. It's about the day you signed away your parental rights. It's about the family you built while forgetting the one you already had. She straightened, and for a flicker of a moment I saw the stubborn determination she used to have as a teenager. Mom, legally, I'm still their mother. That paper I wrote, it wasn't notarized, wasn't filed in court. Technically, it doesn't hold full legal weight. And there she was, the real Rachel. Calculating. Manipulative. So this was never about your children, I said. It was about winning a legal battle to get to the money. It's about both, she insisted quickly. Mom, we can make a deal. I'll take custody, but you can visit them anytime. We can share the responsibility. And the inheritance, we can divide it fairly. You spent money raising them. You deserve compensation. Compensation? The word burned my throat. Rachel, do you honestly think I raised your children for profit? That I sat by their beds when they were sick expecting payment? That I stayed up night after night with their nightmares because I hoped one day you'd repay me? Stop, she shouted, pressing her hands over her ears like a child. I won't stop, I told her, my voice trembling with both anger and love, because this is what you need to hear. I didn't raise those children as an investment. I raised them because I love them, because they are mine, because when you left, someone had to stay. Slowly, she lowered her hands, her face pale. And for the first time in years, I saw in her eyes that same look she had as a teenager when she realized she'd gone too far. Mom, she whispered, her voice small. What do I have to do for you to forgive me? Her question stunned me. I had imagined this moment so many times, but when it finally came, the words didn't come easily. Rachel, forgiveness isn't a bargain. It's not a prize for doing the right things. Forgiveness is a choice, to free yourself from resentment. So, do you forgive me? I studied her, the 39-year-old woman still craving her mother's approval, and I felt everything at once. Love, disappointment, sorrow, and a fragile hope. I forgive you for being a scared child who didn't know how to be a mother, I said slowly. I forgive you for desperate choices made when you were overwhelmed. I forgive you for running when the burden was too heavy. Her lips curved into a trembling smile. But I wasn't finished. But I cannot forgive you for returning only because of money. I cannot forgive you for threatening me with prison to get what you wanted. And I will not allow you to wound these children again. The smile slipped from her face. So, there's nothing I can do? Yes, there is, I said firmly. You can go back to your life. Work on yourself. Change for real this time. And maybe someday, if you've truly become someone different, Daniel, Sarah, and Lily will decide on their own if they want you in their lives. But the inheritance, it belongs to them. And I will make sure they get it when they're ready. At that moment, a court officer appeared in the hall. Recess is over. The judge is ready. As we walked back toward the courtroom, Rachel slipped her hand onto my arm. Mom, she whispered. If I drop the case, would you let me see the children sometimes? Supervised visits? I stopped and looked her in the eye. That decision isn't mine, Rachel. It's theirs. If they want it, I'll honor it. But I won't push them. We stepped back into the courtroom where Judge Whitman was already seated, his expression grave. Rachel and David Barnes returned to their table, but I could see something had shifted. Her shoulders slumped. She looked smaller, deflated, drained of fight. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Whitman began, his voice solemn, I have reviewed all of the documentation. This case is not a simple custody dispute. It is far more serious. His eyes pinned Rachel. Mrs. Collins, after examining your written renunciation of parental rights, the threatening text messages, and your documented absence for 13 years, I have serious questions for you. Rachel rose, trembling, leaning on the table for support. Do you admit that you voluntarily wrote this renunciation on October 15, 2011? David Barnes jumped in. Your Honor, my client was in the middle of a severe mental health crisis. She cannot be held accountable for choices made under such circumstances. Judge Whitman's tone sharpened. Mr. Barnes, I reviewed the medical records you submitted. They show your client was discharged from psychiatric treatment 2 months before that document was written. Her doctor certified she was mentally stable at the time. Rachel wavered, and David caught her arm to steady her. Furthermore, the judge continued, I checked public records. On December 20, 2011, 2 months after signing away her parental rights, your client legally married Mr. Javier Dawson. Can you explain how someone supposedly incapable of making decisions about her children was capable of entering into a marriage contract? The silence was crushing. My heart thundered as we all waited. Your Honor, Rachel said, her voice barely audible, I just wanted to start over. I thought it would be better for everyone. Better for everyone? The judge shot back. Or better for you? Rachel broke down again, sobbing into her hands. Mrs. Collins, Judge Whitman went on, I have also reviewed school records for your son, Paul, born in 2012. They show you have been a consistent, involved mother in his education, attending meetings, school events, and providing a stable home. Clearly, you had the capacity to be a mother. You simply chose to exercise it only with the child that was convenient for you. Each word fell like a hammer, crushing whatever hope Rachel still had. But most concerning, the judge said, lifting the papers in his hand, are these text messages, explicit threats to accuse your mother falsely. That is not only immoral, it is extortion. A felony. David Barnes scrambled to his feet. Your Honor, we request a recess to discuss withdrawing the case. No, Mr. Barnes, the judge said firmly. Given the threats and extortion, I am legally obligated to refer this matter to the district attorney for review of possible criminal charges. Rachel screamed from her chair. No, please. I just wanted my children back. Judge Whitman's voice thundered. You did not want your children, Mrs. Collins. You wanted their inheritance. The evidence proves it. He turned to me. Mrs. Collins, do you wish to press charges against your daughter for extortion? The question hit me like a stone. I had imagined this moment many times, but never believed I'd actually face it, deciding whether to send my own daughter to prison. I looked at Rachel. Her eyes pleaded with me, desperate. Then I looked at Daniel, Sarah, and Lily, faces tight with worry, waiting for my answer. In the end, I searched my heart and gave an answer that surprised even me. Your Honor, I said, steady but heavy, I do not wish to bring criminal charges against my daughter. Rachel let out a shaky sigh of relief, but I didn't stop there. However, I do request a restraining order that prohibits her from contacting my grandchildren or me for at least 5 years, unless it's done through a lawyer and with this court's approval. Judge Whitman nodded. That seems reasonable. Anything else, Mrs. Collins? Yes, Your Honor. I also ask that it be entered into the record that Mrs. Rachel Collins voluntarily renounced all parental rights over Daniel, Sarah, and Lily Collins on October 15, 2011, and that any future attempts to claim custody be considered frivolous and without merit. Granted, the judge replied, making notes. Rachel rose unsteadily to her feet. Mom, please don't do this. Don't take my children away from me forever. I turned to her, my voice soft but unwavering. Rachel, I'm not taking anything away. 13 years ago you gave them up. You signed that renunciation. You built another family and left them behind. I'm simply protecting what you abandoned. They're my children, she cried. No, I said firmly. They are the children you bore. But I'm the one who raised them. I'm the one who gave them love without conditions, who gave up my peace, my health, and my money so they would have a home. Daniel suddenly stood up. Your Honor, may I say something? The judge gestured him forward. Daniel walked with the dignity of a man, though in his eyes I still saw the pain of a boy. Your Honor, I want it on record. My sisters and I don't see Rachel Collins as our mother. She gave us life, yes, but our mother is Margaret Collins. She raised us, cared for us, loved us, and never abandoned us. He turned to Rachel. And I want you to know, if someday you truly change, if you learn to give love without expecting anything back, maybe we'll consider knowing you as a person. But you'll never be our mother. That role belongs to Grandma. Rachel broke down, sobbing. But Daniel wasn't finished. And about Uncle Arthur's inheritance, I want it known that when we turn 21, part of that money will go to Grandma Margaret. She deserves it for everything she's sacrificed for us. Sarah and Lily rose and joined their brother. I want to speak too, Sarah said clearly. She looked straight at Rachel. I don't hate you, but I don't know you either. To me, you're a stranger who shares DNA. My real family is right here with Grandma and my siblings. Lily, the youngest, fixed Rachel with steady eyes. And if you had come back for love, if you had come back because you missed us, we might have built something. But you came back for money. And that tells us who you really are. Judge Whitman tapped his gavel gently. This court rules the following, Mrs. Margaret Collins is confirmed as the permanent guardian of minors Sarah Collins and Lily Collins. A 5-year restraining order is hereby established against Mrs. Rachel Collins. Her custody petition is dismissed with prejudice, and she may not file similar motions without substantial evidence of changed circumstances. Rachel collapsed in her lawyer's arms. Mom, she whispered hoarsely. Will you ever completely forgive me? I walked slowly to her side, my heart heavy with years of sorrow. I touched her tear-streaked cheek. Rachel, I forgave you a long time ago. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll let you hurt these children again. They've suffered enough. What am I supposed to do now? She asked, her voice small like a child's. You're going to go home. You're going to raise the son you have. You're going to work on yourself, on becoming a better woman. And maybe someday if you truly change, Daniel, Sarah, and Lily can decide for themselves if they want to see you. And if Javier leaves me because I didn't bring the money, she whispered. I let out a deep sigh. Then maybe it's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Maybe it's time you stop letting men dictate your choices. The judge rose. This court is adjourned. As we left, I felt a strange mix of victory and grief. I had won the legal battle, but lost the hope that my daughter had returned for love. Still, when my grandchildren wrapped their arms around me in that courthouse hallway, I knew I had made the right choice. Sometimes love means protecting those you love, even if it hurts someone else you love too. 3 months later, I sat in my little kitchen, watching Lily practice guitar for her school recital. The evening sun lit her face, so much like mine at her age. Daniel was away at college on a hard-earned engineering scholarship, and Sarah was finishing high school while working part-time at a bookstore. Life had found its rhythm again, different but calmer. The fear of losing them was gone. The doorbell rang. It was Elma, my neighbor and Judge Whitman's sister, holding a tray of fresh tamales. Margaret, I brought you something, she said with her warm smile. Thank you, Elma. Come in, let's have some coffee. As we brewed the pot, I saw that look on her face, the one that meant she had something to say. Out with it, Elma. I've known you 40 years. It's about Rachel, she finally said. My brother told me she's been asking how to appeal. A knot twisted in my stomach. And what did they tell her? That she has no grounds. That her renunciation stands, especially after her behavior. But there's more. Javier left her last week. He took Paul and said he couldn't stay with a woman who'd lost $150,000 for being stupid. The words hit me hard. For all her mistakes, Rachel was still my daughter. It hurt knowing she was suffering. Where is she now? In a small apartment downtown. She's cleaning offices at night. Theodore says she looks awful, thin, broken. Lily had stopped playing guitar and was listening. Are you talking about my biological mom? Yes, sweetheart, I answered gently. She's going through a hard time. Lily sat beside me. Do you feel bad for her, Grandma? Her question startled me with its maturity. Yes, I feel bad. No matter what, she's my daughter. I don't like seeing her suffer. But that doesn't mean we were wrong to protect ourselves. I stroked her hair. Sometimes you can feel compassion for someone and still keep your distance. Elma placed her hand softly on mine. Margaret, one more thing. Rachel's been asking about the children. She hasn't broken the restraining order, but she's been asking neighbors how they're doing, how school is going, if they need anything. Do you think she's planning something? I asked, worry rising in me. I don't know, Elma said. But my brother thought you should be aware. That night, after Lily went to bed, I lay awake thinking about Rachel. I pictured her sitting alone in that tiny apartment. No partner, no son, no steady job. Just regret, loneliness, and desperation pressing down on her. The next morning, I did something even I didn't expect. I went to the supermarket and bought a week's worth of groceries: rice, beans, chicken, vegetables, bread, milk. I packed them into bags and drove to the address Elma had given me. The building was old and worn down. I climbed 3 flights of creaky stairs and knocked on the door of apartment 3B. I heard slow footsteps. Then Rachel's voice through the door. Who is it? It's me, Rachel. It's Mom. There was a long silence. Finally, bolts clicked open. The door swung wide and I saw my daughter. Elma had been right, she looked awful. She'd lost weight, her eyes were ringed with deep shadows, and her clothes were clean but threadbare. Mom, she whispered, almost like she couldn't believe I was standing there. What are you doing here? I brought you some things, I said, lifting the bags. May I come in? She stepped aside. The apartment was small but tidy. An old sofa, a little table with 2 chairs, a tiny TV. Bills were piled high on the table. Why? She asked as I set the groceries in the kitchen. Because you're my daughter, I said simply. And no matter what happened, I can't let you go hungry. Rachel sank onto the sofa and burst into tears. Mom, I lost everything. Javier took Paul. He told me I was a loser, that I had the chance to get easy money, and I ruined it by being sentimental. I sat beside her. And what did you say to him? Nothing. Because he was right. I'm a loser. I lost my first children. I lost the inheritance. I lost Paul. I lost my home. Rachel, I said softly but firmly, you didn't lose your first children. You abandoned them. That's different. Her swollen eyes met mine. You're never going to stop reminding me of my mistakes, are you? I'm not here to rub it in. But I won't let you rewrite history either. If you want to change, you have to start by accepting the truth. And what truth is that? I walked to the window overlooking the street. That you had 3 beautiful children. And you left them because they didn't fit your new life. That you built another family and forgot about them for 13 years. That you only came back when money was involved. I know all that, she shouted. I live with that guilt every day. Guilt is useless, Rachel, I said, turning back. Guilt is just self-pity dressed up pretty. What matters is real repentance and a true desire to change. And how can you tell if I really repent? Because if it were real, you wouldn't have come back demanding custody. You would have come back asking forgiveness. You would have asked what you could give, not what you could get. She sat silent for a long time. Finally, she whispered, Is there any way I can ever see my children again? Maybe, I told her. But only on their terms when they're ready, if they ever are. In the meantime, get help. Go to therapy. Find steady work. Learn to stand without leaning on a man. Become the kind of woman you'd have wanted their mother to be. I headed to the door. The food will last a week. After that, you'll have to manage on your own. Will you come again? She asked in a small voice. I don't know, Rachel. That depends on you, on the choices you make now. I left with mixed feelings. I wasn't sure if visiting her was the right move, but I knew I couldn't let my daughter starve. When I got home, Daniel was at the kitchen table studying. He looked up. Grandma, where were you? I was looking for you. I went to see your biological mom, I said plainly. His expression hardened. Why? Because she's hungry, I replied. And because she's still my daughter. Daniel closed his books and studied me. Grandma, I hope that doesn't mean you're letting her back into our lives. No, sweetheart. It means I can have compassion without risking our safety. He nodded slowly. Do you think she'll ever really change? I don't know, I answered honestly. But if she does, it'll be because she chose to, not because we saved her. That night, as I got ready for bed, I thought about what life had taught us. That love sometimes means setting boundaries. That protecting those you love sometimes means saying no to others you love. And that real justice isn't revenge. It's letting the natural consequences of someone's choices play out, while you choose love instead of resentment. 1 year later, I was in my garden watching the tomato plants I put in that spring grow strong. Daniel had graduated college with honors and landed an engineering job. Sarah had been accepted into college with a partial scholarship. Lily, 17, was now leading her school's band. My brother's inheritance still sat untouched in their trust accounts, waiting for them to turn 21. But more than anything, my grandchildren had flourished, free from the shadow of abandonment. Elma came by with news. Margaret, I have to tell you something about Rachel. I braced myself. What now? She's been in therapy for 6 months every week, paying for it herself from her cleaning job. And she got a day job as a receptionist at a clinic. No more cleaning at night. She looks better, steadier. I blinked, genuinely surprised. And the kids? She hasn't asked to see them. When folks mentioned you'd visited her, she said you'd already done enough, and now it was her turn to prove she could change. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of pride for my daughter. That afternoon, Lily came home looking thoughtful. Grandma, can I ask you something? Always, sweetheart. Do you think I'll ever want to meet my biological mom? I smiled gently. That's up to you. If someday you want to, I'll support you. If you decide never to, I'll support that too. The choice is yours. That evening, as I cooked dinner, I thought about everything we'd been through. For years I'd carried resentment toward Rachel. Resentment for leaving me with her responsibility, for forgetting her children, for coming back only for money. But somewhere along the way, I realized resentment had chained both of us. Letting go had set me free. At Sarah's 19th birthday, she told me something that filled my heart. Grandma, thank you for saving us. But more than that, thank you for showing us that real love doesn't abandon. Daniel, now 21, had access to his inheritance. The first thing he did was set aside $10,000 for me. For everything you spent on us, he said. I accepted, not because I needed it, but because it mattered to him to give it. Sometimes I wonder what life would have been like if Rachel had come back for the right reasons. If she had asked forgiveness instead of filing demands. If she had shown true repentance instead of legal threats. Maybe we could have built something like an extended family. Maybe the kids would have had a chance to know her in a healthier way. But life isn't about what-ifs. It's about the choices we make with the truth we have. I chose to protect 3 abandoned kids. I chose to love them when their own mother wouldn't. I chose to sacrifice my peace and my resources to give them stability. And when the time came, I chose to fight for them with everything I had. I don't regret a single one of those choices. Today, as I watch Lily practice guitar, Sarah study for college exams, and Daniel plan his future, I know I did the right thing. They've grown into kind, hardworking, empathetic young adults. Proof that unconditional love and firm boundaries can live side by side. People sometimes ask if I hate Rachel. The answer is no. I don't hate her. But I don't excuse her either. She made choices, and choices carry consequences. If there's one lesson here, it's that justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes justice is just life handing each of us what our actions deserve. I earned the love of my grandchildren by giving them love without limits. Rachel earned their distance by choosing absence. It isn't revenge, simply consequence. And maybe, if she truly keeps changing, someday my grandchildren will decide on their own if they want her in their lives. Until then, I'll remain what I've always been. Their grandmother, their safe place, their constant love. Because real love doesn't abandon. It doesn't bargain. It doesn't demand payment. Real love just is quiet and steady like the sunrise. Deep and strong like the roots of an old tree. And that, in the end, is enough.